This is Lama Tantrapa. Welcome to the webinar dedicated to making the year 2016 your best year to date. Today I am delighted to be interviewed by my student and colleague Sheldon Callahan of the Bay Area, California. Thank you, Sheldon, for joining me today on our webinar.
Thanks for having me.
One of the most simple and at the same time essential questions is, why do we need to plan things? Why can't we just go with the flow? Well, what do you think? Do you go with the flow all the time, or do you plan?
A little bit of both. I find myself majority going with the flow, but sometimes if I want to make things go a particular way, I might have to have a plan or strategy for it. One of the things is that I want to understand, why do most plans and resolutions fail, especially like New Year's resolutions and things like that?
Well, and the funny thing about New Year's resolutions is that this time of the year, many people get into this really cool state of mind when they start daydreaming about what they would like to achieve in their lives. Perhaps they realize that certain things that didn't work out in the previous year or several years, they are ready to let go of. And perhaps they realize that they would like to improve the quality of their life, perhaps discover a more substantial purpose or meaning for their lives, and also just simply improve their physique, improve their health, improve their relationships. And this state of mind is different, sometimes radically different, from the state of mind that most people have throughout the rest of the year. In other words, throughout the rest of the year, people usually aren't in the mode of this deep digging into their consciousness and connecting the dots, so to speak, or connecting with certain deep, profound meaning of things in their lives. They usually just bumbling around or going through the motions, as it were. And these are very different states of mind, going through the motions as opposed to getting creative. And if you're not used to being in that creative state of consciousness that's required for creating your New Year's resolutions or any type of dreams, you basically will default back to the habitual state, which is much less creative and much more going through the motions or simply following certain routines of your daily life. As a result of falling back into this stereotypical daily grind type of state of consciousness, you literally cannot access the capabilities, or may not even remember certain decisions or certain aspirations that you came up with when you were in the creative state of consciousness that happened in the beginning of the year. Without being able to get into that state of consciousness on a consistent basis throughout the year, it's virtually impossible to even remember that you had New Year's resolutions. So no wonder by the end of January, or perhaps another month later, most people fall off the bandwagon in terms of their exercise routine, in terms of their New Year's resolutions, in terms of their improvement of health or relationships or business or other things.
Maybe you can elaborate on the difference between going with the flow and going through the motions.
Well, and the going with the flow often requires a certain degree of creativity. So in other words, there is some balance between just simply surrendering and letting the flow take you wherever the flow is going and navigating the flow. In other words, using the flow to get where you're trying to get. Now, sometimes we try to get somewhere where we really aren't supposed to get. In other words, there is no chance for us to get there. We try to go against the flow, we push against all odds, as it were, and still fail because we simply fail to recognize that the flow isn't even going there. But if there is some connection between our dream that we aspire to manifest and the general flow of things, in other words, we are not aspiring to manifest something completely opposite to where the flow is taking us, but instead we're capitalizing on the existing flow of things. we build upon it and add certain qualities to the dream that we want to manifest that perhaps right now are not present. We may also remove some qualities that are present currently in our dream so that they don't persist in the future. But what happens is that we literally develop the ability to navigate the flow. It's like when you're surfing. It seems like you're going with the flow, but you actually have a freedom of choice. For example, you can choose to go to the right on the wave or to go to the left. You can go faster or slower. I mean, obviously the wave is going at the speed, whichever the speed of the wave is, but you can literally navigate and maneuver. But there is a certain degree to which you have that ability to maneuver without falling off the wave or being crushed by it. So essentially we learn how to develop an understanding of where our boundaries reside, and then we learn how to push the boundaries or expand the boundaries rather than throw ourselves over the edge of our comfort zone. We learn how to expand our comfort zone. So it literally begins to include certain things that used to be outside of our comfort zone, which we couldn't reach. So they were aspirations, or we consider them part of our potential. Obviously, if it is a potential, it hasn't been manifested yet. The reason why it hasn't been manifested is because we haven't been able to get outside of our comfort zone because it was too uncomfortable to be there. But our aspirations usually reside outside of the edges of a comfort zone. And so that's where we also learn to move along the edge and kind of surf the edge of the comfort zone as if it is the edge of a wave. And eventually we notice that it erodes our comfort zone or expands our comfort zone. It actually makes it possible for us to achieve things that previously used to be impossible.
Makes sense. So how do you develop a sense of what you want to create in your life?
Well, it's a matter of energy resonance. Really, what you resonate with is something that you feel particularly in alignment with. Your body, for example, relaxes. You breathe deeper and smoother when you think of something that you resonate with. You may get excited, so your breathing may be affected that way, but at least you don't get tense and cringe when you think of something that you actually resonate with. For example, if you go to a party, and there may be different people, some people you resonate with better than others, who would you rather spend most of the time at the party? Those people who you do resonate with, and when you talk to those people, you feel relaxed, you feel more comfortable, versus those people who you don't resonate with, and then you start cringing when they try to talk to you.
Once you know what you want, how do you determine the next steps?
Well, essentially, we learn how to connect with the dreams that are not only far out. We also learn how to connect with dreams that are closer in terms of the distance on the timeline. We have a special methodology that we will be exploring in our future webinar dedicated specifically to that. But the idea is really simple. If we have a dream that we aspire to manifest, for example, by the end of the year, well, what would happen in the middle of the year? It's also a dream. Right now, we are just daydreaming about what is going to happen in a few months from now. If we look at just what's going to happen a week from now, it's also a dream. It's closer to the present moment than the dream about the end of the year. So what we do is we learn how to develop the ability to manifest smaller dreams that are closer to us in terms of the lapse of time. And then once we manifested them, we gain a certain degree of self-confidence. We already learn a few techniques or skills as to how to manifest our dreams. We also develop certain momentum that will help us manifest further dreams easier. Then we take the next step. Manifest another dream that we've dreamed up perhaps in the beginning of the year, and we gain even more self-confidence. We gain even more momentum, and we become even more proficient at manifesting our dreams. So that essentially leads to mastery. As you continue doing that over and over, let's say every week you look back, where have I gone over the course of the last week or the course of the last few weeks, as opposed to where I was, let's say, a month ago. If that's a significant transformation or it's a noticeable progress, then you feel like, wow, I'm actually progressing. And sensing that progress is an important part of manifesting our dreams, because we don't want to just manifest something in the future because we don't like the present moment. We don't want to run away from the present because we hate it. We actually have to embrace the present moment, because this is the launching pad for taking the next step. And if we realize that taking baby steps is a lot easier than taking large leaps, we have to have solid footing right at the present moment so that we take the next step and we don't lose the footing, and we actually take a reasonable step without losing balance, as it were. What happens is that we have to have a decent level of acceptance of the present moment. If we accept the present moment, it also may be because we look back and we see where we have gone, we see what we have already achieved, then we don't just dislike the present moment because we haven't manifested our big dream. We recognize that we have manifested the dream that we used to have, or manifested at least part of it. So we celebrate it. We feel grateful for having gone this far. Instead of feeling dreadful about the present moment, we actually enjoy it fully. Then we can move on, taking the next step and the next step, each time still maintaining a sense of recognition that we have gone a long way. This journey has been an amazing discovery of our true nature. We celebrate discovering who we really are, our purpose, and the meaning of life. Then it makes each and every step a meaningful step. We don't have to wait till we reach a particular destination in the future to experience the fullness of life. We actually experience in the present moment and capitalize on that to move forward.
What do we do when we run into things that we don't want to happen? You've been doing a particular thing over and over again. You decide, hey, I don't want that anymore in my life.
Right. Yeah, if you keep doing the same thing and you don't like it, well, you got to do something different so that you would get different results. So in other words, that's a sign of sanity if you recognize that there is cause and effect connections. Unfortunately, many of us do that which is often considered the sign of insanity. If you keep doing the same thing, keep getting the same results, and you expect different results instead, that's a form of insanity. So what I learn and practice and teach is how to develop a more sane approach to life. And that requires recognizing cause and effect connections. And also recognizing that if you don't want what you get, and you keep on getting what you don't want, well, how can you take responsibility for it? Because if you don't take responsibility, you don't feel like it's up to you what you're getting. In other words, you don't feel like you actually have any say in your destiny. In order to have a say in your destiny, you need to take responsibility for the results that you're getting. The results of your actions, results of your interactions, results of your dreaming, and what kind of energy you contribute to manifestation of your dreams. And so what we learn is that often we contribute certain energy that makes particular dreams manifest in a way that we don't really like. Well, it may have to do with the quality of energy that we contributed. If we contribute energy that, for example, has a certain degree of discord or disharmony associated with it, that obviously will create a type of a dream that also will have disharmony in it. Now, if we don't like what we're getting, perhaps it would make sense to look what kind of energy do they contribute to the manifestation of my dream. If I keep doing the same thing, and more importantly, if I continue being the way I am, meaning I identify with certain qualities of character, with a certain identity who I think I am, obviously I will contribute the same energy over and over. So this is a profound transformation that can occur when we realize that if we want to contribute different energy, it will actually require shifting our sense of identity. So when I mentioned that if you take these webinars, you will not be the same, I wasn't kidding. If you're ready to experience that kind of transformation, you will change the way that you perceive yourself and the world around you. That shift will lead to identifying with different energies that have to do with different values and different belief systems. Then you'll be able to contribute energies associated with the new values that you uphold. That will lead to manifestation of different dreams.
The thing that I'm trying to wrap myself around is how do you remain open to the energies that are more productive, more harmonious to you, and still maintain boundaries?
Well, boundaries are helpful and healthful things. And at the same time, boundaries also can create limitations. Often we run into certain self-imposed limitations, which actually sometimes are the boundaries that we build around ourselves, trying to protect ourselves or trying to make sure that others don't intrude into our space or don't intrude upon our values. And so there's a fine line between building healthy boundaries and building the boundaries that are so thick. The walls that we build around us are so solid that they actually block the flow of chi. They block the flow of life. They literally imprison us. If we create this kind of prison cell for ourselves, that's a result of our own doing. Again, we'll have to take responsibility for having built that kind of boundary system that basically created a prison or even a labyrinth for ourselves. So we basically are stuck within certain walls. And these boundaries have a lot to do with our beliefs. So for example, those people who believe in very regimented, dogmatic set of beliefs often end up creating such limitations for themselves that they cannot expand beyond a certain edge of the comfort zone that they feel so protective about that they cannot even fathom going beyond it. Well, if the dreams and aspirations actually reside outside of the comfort zones, that often will mean that they will be very difficult to achieve. So manifestation of our dreams often requires taking down some of these walls. At the same time, we also need to maintain certain degree of autonomy, certain boundaries that we maintain so that we don't get infringed upon, or for example, don't get pushed around by, say, public opinion. For example, many people develop goals in their minds and New Year's resolutions based on the influence from the media, from society, from their friends, from their social milieu. So in other words, these are not their authentic dreams, they're actually dreams of other people. And I've never heard of anyone who would thrive or be happy if they constantly try to manifest dreams that don't really belong to them. And what happens as a result, even if you manage to manifest a dream that didn't really belong to you, for example, your parents said, you know, we want you to become a lawyer. Lawyers make good money, so son, we want you to become a lawyer. And you say, well, okay, whatever you say. So you go to law school, you get a degree, you may even become a lawyer. It doesn't mean that you're going to be a happy lawyer. It often means that if it was not a dream. And I have many students who happen to be lawyers who experienced something very similar. They went to school, they became lawyers, and they aren't happy. So now they are working on getting out of that prison cell that they essentially created using the elements of the dreams of other people. And so what happens is that if we, from the get-go, recognize that we want to pursue our own authentic dreams, it's going to be a lot easier to commit to manifestation of those dreams because we won't have internal resistance, we won't have the dissonance, and also as we progress along the path of manifesting those dreams, we will feel happier and happier and happier. Does it make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And that kind of segues me into my next question is how do unresolved emotions factor into repeating happenings or behavior?
So for example, if you are, let's say, experiencing anger and that leads to some angry behavior,
Right.
the question is, how do you let go of that anger so that it doesn't keep cropping up and creating cyclical crisis in your life?
Correct.
Well, obviously, it's important to look at the root cause. What caused that behavior? Since I'm a coach and not a therapist, I used to be a therapist, but I let go of that hat, so to speak, of that title a while ago. I usually encourage people to stay focused on the present rather than going back into the experiences that happened a long time ago that triggered that anger. Perhaps sometime in your childhood you got frustrated or angry about something and it just became your modus operandi, so to speak. Well, instead of going back into childhood and trying to fix the situation back then, we realized that it's really not about fixing things in the past. It's about reconciling with energies present right here, right now. In other words, if that anger comes from the past, let's see what we can do with this energy of anger at the present moment. If we don't want to carry it into the future, what can we do with it? Now, if we understand the laws of thermodynamics, we know that you cannot destroy energy. So instead of destroying energy or throwing it away, eventually, if you realize you're one with the universe, where are you going to throw it away? You have to integrate it into the wholeness of who you are and perhaps let it transform, go through some alchemical transmutation so that it would turn into an energy that can be more beneficial to you. For example, the anger energy can turn into the energy of high motivation. Because if you become angry or frustrated about how you're just beating your head against the wall and it cannot break through certain limitations or certain challenges, well, let's see how we can turn that energy of anger and just getting angrier and angrier. What can we do to make it so that this energy would propel us in a direction that is slightly different? Instead of going against the wall or against the obstacle, how can we go around the obstacle? You know, it's like water. For example, if you imagine a stream flowing down the hill, the water is flowing wherever the gravity is pulling it, and then it runs into an obstacle, for example, a big boulder. Well, water probably is not going to just stand there beating the head against the boulder. It will flow somewhere. Where is it going to flow? Wherever it can. It will try flowing this way, try flowing that way. It will find a way to move beyond that boulder eventually. Maybe it will seep underneath it. Maybe it will flow over the boulder, or most likely find a way around it. Now, if that water had a voice, and you could ask the water, so how did you overcome that obstacle that you ran into on your path? What would water say?
It just went path of least resistance.
It found a way around. As a matter of fact, the water probably doesn't perceive the boulder as an obstacle. It will probably say, what obstacle? It was not an obstacle, it was a landmark. It was the turning point on my journey. So that landmark was an indication where my path needed to turn. So now I'm flowing around this boulder just because, well, that's the turning point in my journey where I needed to turn this way. If a different shape and form of the boulder appeared, perhaps it would flow somehow differently. So in other words, it's not an obstacle on the water's path. It's just simply an invitation to find a more fluid way, more resourceful way to move where the gravity pulls it. Now, if that is something that we can apply to ourselves, we can also begin living our lives problems-free. If we realize that any problem that life throws our way is not really an obstacle, it doesn't have to be perceived as a problem. We may actually be able to start perceiving it as a learning opportunity, as an opportunity to grow and expand our awareness, expand our range of motion. It may also serve as the landmark. Okay, man, this is where you turn your course of actions. It's not a problem. It's simply a landmark, indicating where your journey turns. Suddenly, you no longer perceive it as a problem, and if you consistently maintain this state of consciousness, you will be able to perceive everything in your life as these type of lessons rather than problems. Literally making it so that you live your life problem-free. How would you like to live your life problem-free?
I would love that. That would be great.
Problem-free living is really about state of consciousness that allows you to recognize the issue that cropped up in your life. Not as a problem, but as a learning opportunity sooner. We sometimes realize this years later, maybe even decades later. You know, most people have hindsight 20/20, as they say. But can we shorten this time lapse between the event that we perceived as a problem and the point in time when we recognize that it was a great learning opportunity, for which we become grateful. So we no longer dread that thing that happened, or we don't feel angry about it. We actually feel grateful that it happened. Now, in this case, then, we basically not just resolve the emotional issues, we completely transcended them.
Yeah.
That's pretty powerful, isn't it?
Very powerful. Very powerful. That's a great place to marinate on. And that's the end of the questions that I have. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think that not only is helpful to me, but I feel like it will be helpful for other people as well.
Absolutely. Well, and I want to thank you, Sheldon, and I want to thank all our viewers for enjoying our webinar. Please stay tuned for the next webinar in which we will explore more detailed practices that will allow you to manifest and live your dreams in the year 2016, making this year the best year of your life to date. Until then, have a wonderful time. Namaste.
Namaste.